And
Look at that transition.
What? That's not it. That's not Rene. Hello, Rene.
That's right. There we go. Hey.
Wow,
Hey, welcome.
Matrix
Let's see
there.
if you can win the mute game here. No, you gotta go on mute and then try and say something, and we gotta tell you to go off mute. Come on, you're breaking the script.
Yeah. Welcome, Rene.
I'm sorry
Welcome,
about
Rene.
that.
I know, you're just too good for us. You made it through the first hurdle. Rene Brandel, welcome to the show. Senior Product Manager for AWS Amplify. Rene, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, I joined the Amplify team about a year or so ago, right? And I work on the Amplify CLI and Amplify Datastore.
Fantastic. And I understand that today we'll be talking about something specifically related to Datastore that folks who are trying to build authentication and authorization rules are going to be particularly excited about. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, right? And the way I would explain it to people is Amplify Datastore is going to be your best friend if you're going to build a mobile or web app that needs some sort of an offline data requirement, right? So it synchronizes data from the cloud. You can modify it locally, offline as well, right? And then once it's back online your device, all automatically works. And for this particular product, for Datastore, we've now enabled this capability to give you more flexibility around the authorization rules. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I really want to dive into this with you. I've had a chance to see some of this stuff, and I'm really excited. I think folks tuning in are going to be as well. But in order to bring as many people along for the ride as possible, can we zoom out a little bit? Yep. What is Amplify, and then what is Amplify Datastore?
Yeah. So Amplify is a AWS set of tools and services that really help front-end mobile and web developers become successful, right? That means we provide you a mechanism to easily create your app backend, right? We allow you to host your web app with full CI/CD right out of the box, connect your repo, done. And also a set of client-side libraries that allows you to connect to that backend, right? So we are a fully opinionated framework.
Yeah.
So instead of dealing with like refresh tokens or calling Cognito SDKs, we are really helping customers with this lens of different categories like authentication, right? So our APIs look more like authentication.signin, right? And then you don't have to worry about doing refresh tokens. I started my career in identity. Trust me, it's a lot of work. So we abstract all of that stuff away for you. Yeah.
I'm an Amplify user. This bald guy uses Amplify for his personal blog, so I can tell it's a chef's kiss. Now, I want to hear from chat. Chat, tell us, are you using Amplify? If you are, what are you using Amplify with? We want to hear that as well. But Rene, tell us, what is Datastore?
Yeah. So Datastore is really the ability for it's a client-side library that allows you to synchronize cloud data offline locally, right? So it stores everything on device. When you query against Datastore, it gives you the local storage information immediately. That's why the queries are practically instant. And then in the background, it's like synchronizing the data with the cloud. So you don't have to worry about all the cloud connectivity and all that part of the data access story. Thank you, AM.
We have a fan of Amplify here, AM. But thank you. So okay, Datastore is this a wonderful thing that can help your application's performance and all that stuff. But one of the biggest things about Datastore is these offline features, right? So what are they, and how do they work? Well, actually, why should we care about it? Why is it important?
Yeah, well, the world is not perfect, and so are not devices and the internet, right? I don't think any of us can guarantee that Wi-Fi works 100% of the time. Yeah. So especially when you're walking around mobile devices, right? 3G going in and out of network. There's just so much reliability concerns around the mobile app, right? So Datastore kind of abstracts all those concerns away for you because you always work with the local database, and it's synchronizing in the background for you whenever it is online. You don't have to worry about, oh, God, I have to handle the network error request now. Do I have to cache this information locally or something right now? And all these things, don't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay. So the data basically sits on the device or the user side to be accessed much faster.
Yeah, correct.
Now, before we go any further, I want to grab one of these questions from chat here on LinkedIn. Adware Edward Benner, I'm sorry, says tool to tie on Cognito security. And I'm going to flesh that out with my interpretation here. I think he's alluding to your comment that Amplify really acts as this kind of large scale building blocks for your mobile applications. It's an opinionated framework, and you mentioned Cognito here. So can you elaborate a little bit more, especially with respect to authentication authorization? How does this exactly integrate with Cognito?
Yeah, absolutely. So when our customers are creating authentication resources, under the hood, it's all powered by AWS services that we are familiar with, like Cognito User Pool, Identity Pool, and all that stuff, right? And so all of our other categories, as we call them, like our API category that facilitates this data setup, can tie in with these resources. So, for instance, I can prevent, for instance, my data to be accessed unless you're signed in with Cognito and stuff like that, right? The first interaction touchpoint from Amplify customers is always like these higher level categories that are more use case based, if you will, right? But all the resources, that's actually my favorite part of Amplify. All the resources are deployed within the customer's account via CloudFormation. So if they wanted to look under the hood on what we're configuring, it's all there, right? So we're not hiding that from the customer, and they can tweak it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
I think as a person who I have in the past have written my own PHP authentication system, I can respect this a lot because one thing you don't want to do in a public setting or an application that's going to be used and available a lot is to try to invent your own things willy-nilly. So I'm a big fan of this. And as AM says here, just deploy your web application on the same service that run Route 53, and that's it. But that's not exactly how it works at AM. But I would say that Amplify, if you host your web application on Amplify, it gets close.
Sounds like Darko's got a dark past there. You know, maybe Darko has got some police records for indecently building PHP authentication in public.
I need to take a step tangent here. I've written pure PHP without any library, and on top of that, I used vanilla JavaScript. No jQuery, nothing. It's not because I thought I was amazing. It's the opposite. I didn't know things existed. I didn't know frameworks, and writing your own authentication. I'll tell you a secret. My first authentication method stored all passwords in plain text. I didn't know you shouldn't do that. So things like this help out. Don't pull a Darko.
Well, you say that, but there, and while this might sound silly, it's really, I think authentication and authorization is probably one of the most reinvented things, and unnecessarily slow. So perhaps ever, right? I mean, just think about the number of times people have built, the refresh token flow and auth rules and setting up a Cognito user pool. And I think, Rene, what you may be getting at, I'll extend your words further. You tell me if I'm using your words unfairly, but it sounds like what you're saying is, maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe there's some best practices here. Maybe it's not so easy to get right in the first go. Maybe you would store passwords in the first time. But, by relying on Amplify and its opinionated ways of doing some of these things, you can get added to your application in a very short amount of time. And is it going to do everything? Maybe not, but it's going to get you a long ways there that would have taken a lot of time and perhaps caused a lot of problems along the way. So that's really, I think, when you look at kind of a framework, right? When you look at a tool chain, what it's doing for you really is it's kind of enforcing a set of standards and practices that really get you very far and really get you off the ground quickly. And I think Amplify does that across all the major features. The other thing I want to plug is Amplify also has login UI for your web and mobile applications, right? Which you can customize, and they look great, right? So you not only do you not have to configure the backend and like how you salt and store the passwords and things like that, but you get a nice login UI that automatically connects to your Cognito user pool. So I can't overstate that enough.
And here's the thing, on a personal note, most of your applications are not better because you built your own authentication method. that doesn't benefit your end users. It's fine, but it doesn't make your application specific unless you're selling an authentication method. That's a different story. So why spend hours and hours developing and maintaining and keeping up to date of such a complex thing? Well, you can offload it to a thing like Amplify. And speaking of these authorization, all that stuff, let's get back to Datastore. So what is this new thing that Datastore supports when it comes to authorizations? Maybe you can explain to us.
Yeah. So before this launch, our customers could specify authorization rules on top of their data access patterns, right? So I can say, for instance, this table can have read-only view for all unauthenticated users. But what if I wanted to add like a specific group of people, like a moderator who can like delete that table, right? So we supported that for a while for online-only data. But now we're extending this feature to add all of these different rules for a particular table to Datastore. So that also applies to all of your offline data now as well, which is really, really exciting because now you basically get more parity between online-only features and offline available features as well. So yeah, it's going to be more fun to build these applications.
Now you said you can have more granular permissions. So does that mean that I can give subsets of users special permissions? For example, some users should have write access. Some users should have read-only access. Just can you talk a little bit more about the level of granularity and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that you would limit a particular set of users to have access to is actually piggyback off of the point that we talked about earlier, how we're building on top of Cognito. So we actually allow you to create user groups, add users to them, and say, hey, this particular user group, let's say they're administrators or moderators, they get to have delete access, right? Whereas everybody else gets to have read access. So all of these capabilities work. And underneath the covers, we actually abstract a lot of these different technologies like IAM, Cognito, user pool, OIDC, and API keys, and so on and so forth. But we expose it in a much more use case oriented way. Like, oh, all the signed in users get to do what?
Yeah.
Create, read, update, or delete, right? Or this specific set of users get to do what, right? So that's again where Amplify comes in and provides a little bit more of a use case oriented approach. Yeah.
This is wonderful, right? So this is a thing that it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't seem like something. Oh, this is something completely new. So how were the developers, how were the builders out there doing this before this feature?
Yeah, so before this feature, you could specify one rule at a time. So if you had offline only requirements, that was kind of like that was the limit you were hitting. Or alternatively, you would have to write some own local caching logic and rely on the data to be cloud only, right? So with this launch, none of that is happening anymore. All of that problem is gone, and we can now use Datastore offline with all of these different authorization rules.
So developers, use Datastore offline. It will make your end users happier. Trust me. So now you don't have this hurdle if this was the problem too. And yeah, chat, do tell us, have you used Datastore? If you're using Amplify, tell us if you are using Datastore as well.
Or if you're using Amplify, tell us what you're using within Amplify. I think that's also really interesting because Amplify is many things. I realize this, when I talk about Amplify, people often like, well, it also does this. And it's like, yeah, it does. Now that you mention it, it does a lot. So, Rene, I think what you're describing is really kind of a magical thing because it's something that combines, because you said it's cloud data where the source of truth for the data is your backend. It is going to be in the cloud. There's no doubt about that, right? But yet you're also saying that these auth rules somehow play nicely with Datastore, which fundamentally deals with a local slice of the data representation, of the view of the data on the backend. So this to me sounds like, on one hand, you're describing a bird, and on the other hand, you're describing a horse. And I'm having trouble imagining what this animal actually looks like. I demand a demo.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Absolutely.
And there's actually a comment from Tanmay asking an example of authorization dealing with online versus offline data. So maybe we can kind of chat about this as well as you do the demo. So let me bring up your big old screen online.
Okay. This time there is no matrix breaking.
There's no matrix breaking.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, I prepared a little demo, and what better way to show different authorization rules than actually building a Twitter clone because it kind of I feel like every sort of combination, if you will. So you've got like the public view that gets to see everything, right? Users get to delete their own information, and administrators get to delete everything, right? Like moderators of like a Twitter thread and whatnot. Okay, cool. So this is the app that we're building right now, and I have not applied any authorization changes to it. So I can actually say, hi Robert, and it works. I can create new posts and so on and so forth. I'm not logged in. I can delete stuff. And so it is currently fully publicly accessible, right? That's the situation that we're starting at,
Right.
and we're going to actually lock this down with a few different authorization rules.
Okay, let's try it. So cool. What you're gonna in essence do, you're gonna introduce these authorization rules that are gonna block some people from doing specific actions. Right now, it's a free for all, right?
Exactly. Right now, it's a free for all, and I'm glad it's hosted on my local host, so not everybody can just.
This would be an amazing Twitter clone, right? If anybody could add delete things. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So the really breaks down into two parts, right? So number one is like the backend configuration that we just have to apply. And then the other side of it is the client-side configuration, right? Like make sure that your library is aware of these different authorization rules. So first, I'm going to go to my Amplify Admin Ui. So we launched this actually at reInvent last year. It's our visual way for you to really create and manage your application backend. We also have a CLI that does a superset of capabilities, but this is a great way to show things because it's so visual as a tool, right? So I get to, for instance, see my data model in here, right? I can do some lightweight user management. You can see I've already signed up a user for this demo. I could also configure my authentication settings from here. So it's really a very lightweight way for me to look at all this data. Now, with this particular launch, our right-hand side actually has this authorization rules panel that we can now modify. So we've got authenticate. Anyone can be that's authenticated with an API key can do which operations, right? We try to do like a little bit of a natural language here so that you can just read it as a sentence, and that is what the authorization rule is, right? But I can also add additional authorization capabilities, right? So I think we talked about earlier that if it's a Twitter clone, everything that is publicly available should be read-only, right? So because API keys are a way to do a public authentication.
Right.
We also support IAM, but API keys is one way to do it. I can just say now, hey, anyone with authenticated with an API key can read a post, and then there's nothing else. I just uncheck some checkboxes, and I basically got my first authorization rule set up.
Wow.
And
it's all in this lovely, amazing, which I'm super big fan of, admin UI of Cognito. So if you build an application on Cognito and you need an administration interface, this is it. So a quick comment on this, and there's a question from Luis in chat. Luis asks, can Amplify use another authentication provider instead of Cognito?
Yeah, so we've seen customers use it with OIDC as a good way to bridge different providers. We also are piggybacking off of IAM, right?
Okay.
So just to Darko's point here, this, the admin UI is a visual interface for Amplify, and we abstract a lot of these concepts from Cognito away by just using natural language, if you will.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Makes sense. Okay, so you can use things other than Cognito. Right, gotcha.
Yeah. Obviously, Cognito is our first-class default.
Absolutely, and it works really good.
Yeah. So then the next thing I can do is I can say, hey, you know what, for specific user groups, like an administrator group or something, I will want customers to be able to delete information, for instance, right? So I can actually go create a new user group here, and let's call them administrators or something like that. And it's going to automatically create a Cognito user group in the background for me. I'm not going to be exposed to any of that information. Okay. And I can just say, hey, you know what? Administrators, they get to create, read, update, and delete. They basically have access to everything, right?
Yeah. So this thing basically gets it does Cognito stuff on the back end, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. All of our APIs are actually set up, or all of our data experiences are actually set up with a GraphQL API in the front end, right? So there's a bunch of resolvers that handles all the authentication and authorization logic, and then DynamoDB as the table on the back end, right?
Gotcha. Amazing. Yeah. I sometimes I get a bit tempted by Cognito when I get enter the Cognito dashboard. Sometimes like, what are all of these things here, right? So if you can have it from one single place, and especially because this is an admin UI for people. If you're not using Amplify admin UI and you have an application running on Amplify, what are you doing? You can actually this is exposed. Sorry, this is available outside of the console access, so you don't need console access per se to do things here. So wonderful.
Yeah, that's very, very correct, right?
And then I want to point out one other thing here that, earlier we were talking, Rene, about the fact that the framework is opinionated, and I really want to show, because now that we have the demo in front of us, when you do this, when you say, hey, we want to be able to use Cognito in the background, what level of interoperability do we have? Well, that's happening at the level of OIDC, right? And that's a decision that the Amplify framework has made for you, right? It's explicitly saying, hey, look, the currency of identity federation here is OIDC, right? Now, that's not the only identity federation scheme out there, but it is a very, very popular one. And Amplify has already done that analysis for you, right? It's saying a lot of the providers that you're going to use for social logins, for all these other kinds of things that you're going to want to do for auth for your framework, this is the solution that we think is the best starting off.
Yeah. Absolutely, right? And I think, we take that tenet throughout all of our capabilities and features, right? Cool. So the next thing that we should probably look at is it's another authorization rule, which is like, if I go and create my own tweet, I should be able to create, read and delete it, because Twitter famously does not allow you to undo a tweet or edit a tweet unless we create a new subscription service around it. So I guess the next thing that we're going to look at is really owner-based authorization.
Okay.
Right? So I can just flip a switch, and now owner-based authorization is set up for my post table, if you will. So owners get to create a bunch of things. They get to do, they get to read and update and delete information, right? But also they can explicitly deny other authenticated users access, right? So in this case, I can say, hey, you know what? I don't want to deny other people to read, because public-facing information should still be there. But generally, anybody else authenticated, unless otherwise specified, doesn't get to update and delete this particular record, right? So basically, with just a few clicks, I've got the authorization model set up for my Twitter app, right? Or Twitter clone, yeah.
In this case, it's a Twitter app, but in general, it's any data in the backend, right? So currently, you abstract it to like a Twitter clone, but in general, if it was notes, it was entry, any sort of data entry in this case would be on this part. Excellent.
Yeah, correct. I mean, this is not part of my original demo, but I get to show you. It's very easy to add, just like a new like a table to your database. It's literally clicking a button and you got it set up.
Good.
Cool. So from at this point, I'm just gonna go hit save and deploy for my application.
Yep.
For the sake of this demo, though, I am gonna skip ahead to a different environment where I already have everything set up, so we don't have to wait until the deployment spinner is
Rene, I don't think you take anybody in chat. This is like one of those, draw the rest of the owl in one step kind of thing. It's okay. We're gonna give you a pass this one time.
Yeah, but I mean, so shameless plug. The other part that I love about Amplify is we have multi-environment support out of the box, so I can just switch from a development environment to like a final production environment, if you will, with one click, and now I'm in that environment. And just to make your point a little bit clearer, it is not really the draw on the all example, because you can see it's all deployed. That's the only changes I've applied.
Still, this is not a cooking show, but we appreciate the not having to have people wait for here. Before you go, we have Luis again. Hello, Luis. Luis, he has another question here. Maybe you can answer this one, because it's related to Datastore. Does Amplify support replicating profile data? Well, Datastore, right? To different devices. Like when you set up your iPhone application or an account on an iPhone, and then you log into the same application on a different device. Does it actually replicate that data across, or how does it work?
Yeah, so profile data is actually a very interesting segment in this data space, because I think it's really use case dependent if you want to tie it to your authentication system,
Right.
or if you want to tie it to your data system, right? So we see customers do it both ways. But if in this example where do you want to do data replication, what I would recommend you to do is create a user model.
Okay.
Let's say you have a name, email, right?
All right.
And then you can just say, hey, nobody gets like out of no public access at all.
Gotcha.
Oh, sorry. I think I have to enable some other rule first. So no public access at all.
Okay.
And I deny everybody else access. And now I've got my profile replication set up.
There you go. So it
30
does.
seconds.
There you go. Super easy. And I'm a fan of
Yeah.
this data modeling. As a person who doesn't really know how to model data, I truly appreciate this thing right here. Cool. So show us the baked cake.
So yeah, going back to this example, right? I've got my authorization rules set up. Now I actually want to pull in all these new configurations into my client-side app, right? So the trick of why Datastore is so slick in its experience is actually we have a CLI that can generate some code for the client app that is aware of the backend data model. It's actually fully typed as well, which is another fantastic feature of mine. Cool. So I think going in there, I'll first just go to my CLI. And I have this app already set up. It's just a create React app.
Okay.
It's the usual suspects of things, right? My current environment that I have set up locally is the development environment. So I'm just going to go check out the final environment and pull in the latest changes there. For customers who are familiar with Git, which I think almost everyone is here, our environment workflows are modeled similarly to that. So you can actually run the same commands like check out, add, and then pull, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm gonna, so now I'm just gonna go pull in the authorization changes for a second.
So now that you made the changes on the Amplify UI, and now you're basically pulling the changes locally to your workstation that you made there, and they're going to be pulled, I guess, in code form, right? And then you can make the changes to your application. Excellent.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So when I do a pull, actually a bunch of things are happening in my front end code base, right? So number one, this is the most important file you'll deal in the Amplify space, which is the AWS Exports File. It has all the connection information around your setup, your Cognito endpoints, your GraphQL endpoints, and all that information, right? So this is a critical file. And then the other thing, when we detect that you want to use Datastore, we actually create a fully typed set of models for you to interface with, right? So I can actually go in here. So I have a post type that I can use as an object within my code base to interface with, this Twitter post in this case. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, continue.
Okay.
I'm just basking in the awesomeness of this thing.
Awesome. Yeah. It's still, people probably know that I'm new to stream because I'm like always, oh wait, am I supposed to speak now?
You can speak whenever you want.
And just want to clarify one thing. If you go back to the comment about the client-side type generation, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that this is a JS code base because you use just create React app with regular JS. But if this were a TypeScript code base with create React app, we would have TypeScript bindings for all these types as well, right? Yeah, exactly.
That's correct. And in fact, we always generate the TypeScript types just because the IDEs nowadays all take advantage of it anyway. Like even if you just write JavaScript, like this app is a JavaScript thing, right? But if I just start typing, it is actually going to search for a type. So this really just gives developers also like a helper, right? As a write Datastore code.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So by nature, Datastore will be configured and you can use it with the default authorization mode. But if you want to use multi-authorization capabilities like we have today, all you have to do is basically write this one line of code. So change the authorization strategy to multi-auth. And now it's going to be fully aware of all the different authorization configurations that you have. Like if you have a user pool set up in the background, it's going to try with different mechanisms in order to make a successful operation, right? So basically, this is like, functionally speaking, this is all the code I had to write from if I come from like a single authorization rule to a multi-authorization rule experience, right? Everything should now functionally just work, right? So we can actually.
So folks in the chat, if you want to implement this now, Rene can correct me. If you want to implement this feature, go on the admin UI and make those configuration changes. That's it, right? And then just make that single 3 lines of code. That's it.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. That's it.
I'm just restarting my create React app process. That is
Okay.
usually, the devil's in the details around that usually. So I just want to make sure
All right,
that
that's
is all
fine.
fresh.
I'm sure that's gonna work. That's
Cool.
That's a lovely
So-
Twitter clone.
So now we've got our lovely Twitter clone up, right? So functionally should work. That means if I click delete, it should give me an error now because it's not authorized to do so, right? So let me delete. The item is deleted locally, but or it's shown that it's deleted locally, but actually it says it's unauthorized because I don't have permission. I'm not logged in, right? There's nothing here that is actually giving me this permission. So it's generally best practice to also build in your UI blockers, if you will,
Of course, yeah.
for this kind of stuff, right? And if we want, we can do that as well right now, real quick. So I can go into, for instance, my app.js and excuse the demo code. I like to put everything into app.js when I write demos. But basically, I've got this
PHP,
concept.
right?
Yeah. Oh, of course. I mean, but at least it's not plain text password. So this is
Exactly. It's so much better.
So.
So
Perfect.
now you're gonna basically make a client-side blocker that if it actually gets an unauthorized request, you're gonna not remove it from screen, or at least prompt the user. Okay.
Yeah, that is exactly correct. And we can look at a few things. So number one, we have an opinionated library. I mentioned that I think a couple of times now. But we have this off category where I can just get the current user session, and if it's not null, I'm signed in. If it is not null, I'm signed in. If it's null, I'm not. Right. So for instance, I can prevent to show these add a new post button if I just make it conditional on the current user existing. Right. So if I do this spaghetti code and say, hey, if current user exists, then show the button. Right. And I can apply that now to my app. And you can see, oh, there's no more add a new post button. Right. And similarly, we can do the same with the with showing the delete button, right? So I've got the delete inside the little post view components. I can say, hey, you know what? If the current user exists, then don't show delete, right? Simple true false statement.
Yeah.
Now if I come back in here, wait, there is no current user. Oh, almost. So and
debugging
now
live is good.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a little bit thrilling, if you will, to debug live, but it's very, very fun. So now basically we've got our public authorization setup going, right?
Awesome. And now you don't even have the delete buttons, right? So now amazing.
Now there's no way to do it. So but even if customers would or a malicious actor would hack the API to do delete, right, it wouldn't work because the authorization will fail. And then the next part of this is now to look at how would it look like in a logged in user use case, right? So this is actually the authenticator component that Robert mentioned earlier. So it's a couple of lines of code and it automatically connects to Cognito. It's aware of like the connection information and basically gives me a pretty good looking authenticator component that's very customizable. Right? In here, I'm just going to sign in with like a Gmail address. Now, the biggest risk is always typing a password live stream, and I never know if I mistyped it.
Password is always Hunter2. It's always Hunter2, so I don't see a problem there.
Is it? Mine is usually Rene's testing.
Chat, if you get the reference about Hunter2, let us know in chat. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah. So I think here you go. We kind of have our setup now with different the logged in user. I can actually see who's logged in, right? This particular Gmail address. I can say hi from my Gmail account, right? And it's gonna work. And I can go and if I delete a item from this current account, you can see they're no errors, so it all works out. But if I try to delete an item that is not created from this account, then it's gonna tell me, wait, the conditional check has failed, which is another way of saying, oh, you know what, the condition of you being the owner of this record is not there, so therefore this authorization has failed, right?
Gotcha.
And again, good practice, we should build in like preventions for this particular UI block, and you know, we can just extend what we had earlier. So every current user's has an attributes element, and then there's something called the sub, and this is a little bit more for people who are familiar with Cognito. They would actually know what this is, but this is think of it as a unique identifier for your end user, if you will, right? And the thing that we now do in the background for the customer is that every item that has owner-based authorization actually has a field called owner that we automatically append to it. So you can just check, hey, you know, am I the owner of this? And you can read from that, right? So now if I go back here and refresh my app, I've created a few from this account. Let me see. Oh, yeah. So these are created from this account, so it shows. But what I can do is go to my content management system in Admin UI and you know, generate some seed data so that I can see them pop up here.
Auto-generate data is wonderful.
Auto-generate data. So a lot of information here. Oh wait, why does it not work? Let me see.
Did you? It's all running locally, so you don't have to deploy anything. So.
Oh, you know what? It's
not current user. Yeah.
If I do it like this, this.
Yeah.
God. we're getting there. We're getting there, and there you go. So all the items that I create. So hi from Gmail, yay, and I add it to the bottom, and you get the delete button. I don't have it anywhere else, and therefore it works, right? Cool. So so this is basically authorization setup for our for owner-based authorization, right?
Yeah.
The last one that we want to look at is when we want to bring in the moderators to moderate the chat to make sure they can, you know, delete things and so on and so forth on their own accords, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So first, the first thing I would do is first go to the Amplify admin console where I can do some lightweight user management.
Okay.
And I see I've got a few users in here, so I'm switching between the Gmail or the Outlook account. That's usually a way for me to demo things. So I've already got this admins group that you've seen. And I've already added the Outlook user to the admin group, right? Okay. So there you go. The admin group has
and this is Cognito user. This is Cognito user group management, right? When you say
exactly, it's all backed by
Cognito.
That. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing that's really beautiful about this architecture is that if you start from Amplify and you have additional services where you that you want to create through another tool, you can actually reuse the same Cognito user pool, right? So. Yeah. It's all like interconnected in the AWS world, if you will.
But if I'm using something other than Cognito, this still works, right? I'm still able to create groups. Like if I'm using some other authentication provider, would this work?
So if you configure the OIDC through Cognito user pool, yes.
Okay.
So user pool is a gating point for this user management capability.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Cool. So let me log into my admin's account. So there you go. Okay, cool. So I've logged into my admin's account, but you see the delete buttons haven't shown up yet. Yeah. It's because we haven't done the particular check for the administrator information, right? So for the administrator information, I can actually go back to my code base here. And I'm going to put an or condition on this this whether or not I should show this delete button.
Yeah.
And we provide basically some sign-in user information that you can access. And so this is a little bit more involved, but it gives you basically all the Cognito user groups that you're part of, and then you can check, hey, does this include the admins group, right?
Right.
And if it does, show the button itself.
It's wonderful. And can you show the password in plain text as well, like some of us do?
No.
Boo.
So, oh yeah, so I refreshed the app and you can see now I've got delete buttons and everything. I can delete this, delete that. I can delete everything. I can keep deleting stuff, and it all works. And I can, yeah, probably see that already synchronized live into my setup here. So there's now only 13 items I can keep deleting. And if I come back here again, we'll probably be less than that. Yeah,
Wouldn't
10.
it be nice to have a delete button on Twitter sometimes?
Yeah. Certainly on some other people's posts.
Exactly. You can build your own Twitter clone with AWS Amplify and this lovely tool and live out your Twitter fantasies here, right? By deleting other people's posts.
Yeah,
awesome.
That is exactly true. Yeah. So this is actually the end of the demo, but I just want to recap kind of like we set up the backend using Admin Ui with just a few clicks, really, if you think about it, right? And then you flip one switch on the library configuration, and it just works. And then last but not least, the UI changes, we provide you the right attributes to apply around them.
Awesome.
And I also want to call out that you didn't actually have to do any of the work to stand up a GraphQL server.
Yeah.
Have a GraphQL endpoint. How did that get there? Amplify magic.
Amplify
exactly.
magic.
Yeah.
There's a question from Pocket Gnarlies. Pocket Gnarlies asks, is it possible to use a custom group stored in DynamoDB instead of a Cognito user group?
That's actually a very good question. So it is on our roadmap, and there's I don't know how you pick these questions, but they're perfect segues in saying that Amplify CLI and Amplify.js is open source. Amplify libraries are open source. So we track all of our feature requests through demands on our GitHub repositories, right? And we have an RFC out for and/or rules and dynamic group authorization. So all of that is on our roadmap, and we're actively looking into those scenarios.
Amazing. That's a really good thing. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, cool. Thank you for. Please do keep the questions coming in. If you have questions regarding AWS Amplify, Datastore, this latest feature, or well, why did I store passwords in plain text? Please do share them in the chat. We would love to talk to you. Awesome. Now, I had a question written down somewhere on this entire topic. Wait, I had yes. When we have these different authorization rules, right? How are they being evaluated? Which order are they being evaluated in? Because that's very important to know.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good good question. So for us, when we have multiple authorization rules, we actually have a priority table for it, right?
Okay.
So if you can look at the priority table on our documentation. It's under Datastore setup authorization rules, and under multiple authorization types priority order, you see which rules we're first evaluating from top to bottom, and then we apply to them. A general principle that you can think around this is we start from the most specific set of rules to the most generic downstream, right?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rene. Wonderful.
Cool. Thank you.
I think we can, with that being said, I would love to get you to tell us, well, no, not tell the audience, tell the chat, what do they need to do to check these things out? If they want to play with it, try it out, where can they go? What can they read? Who can they yell at?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few places. So if you want to just get started with Amplify, go to sandbox.amplifyapp.com. You can get started without an AWS account today. You can play with it, see if it's the right feature set for you, and then deploy. And so that's a really great way to start it. Alternatively, I've also written a blog post about this, so you can find that on the AWS the AWS blog under front-end web and mobile. I created a one-click deployment way for you to play around with all of these capabilities. Last but not least, I need to do a shameless plug for our Discord community as well. So our Discord community is discord.gg/amplify. It's super active and lots of customers helping each other out. And we're also in there as the AWS team, checking in and out and helping people with questions.
Thank you very much. This GitHub page you mentioned, is it the Amplify GitHub page or is there somewhere else? I don't think I have it here. Do you have with you? And you can post it and we can show it up.
Oh, sorry. I thought I provided the link. So that's on me. So, yeah. So yeah, we've got a dedicated Amplify GitHub page. That's correct.
Okay.
So it's github.com/aws-amplify. You'll find every single Amplify project that we have open source in there, right? The CLI. We've also got issue trackers there for console and admin UI. So even for services that are not open source, we're very close with the community there. And Amplify libraries, obviously, as well.
Excellent. Rene, thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Darko. Thank you.